Hello and welcome back to another episode of Journeys Abroad. I think that's basically what we've decided we're going to call it. We haven't officially had a meeting on what we're going to call it, but we're going to work with it. I am sitting here with Diane, and she's going to give us a little bit of insight into what she did in her study abroad, which was through the W&M Mary program in Oxford. I am William Moore, member of SASAB, one of hopefully a slew of interviewers who will be doing these little interviews. I hesitate to call it an interview because I feel like it should be more collegial than that, but who knows? Diane, do you want to introduce yourself? Or Diana, excuse me. I kept reading it as Diane. Diana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I'm Diana Hamer. I'm a senior and I am majoring in English and oceanography, and I spent my last year at Oxford studying mostly English literature.
Why did you choose Oxford to go to?
It was very much to do with English. I love studying literature and I love writing in particular, and I had heard that the Oxford program was very writing intensive, and I really liked that, particularly because first of all, it's Oxford. It's been there for hundreds of years, maybe even 1,000 years. I don't know quite really, but there's so many resources there. They have a copy of every single book that was published in the English language. While I was there, I did Shakespeare, I did Irish literature, I did Victorian literature, I did 1900s African American literature. I really, really tried to study as much as I possibly could and take advantage of the resources.
Okay, so you did it through the W&M Mary program, which was specifically through Hertford College. How did you find the academics to basically be different than here at W&M Mary?
It was very independent, so I only had one-hour meeting a week, or sometimes two, where I would present my tutor, as they call the professors there, with my essay that I had spent all week writing and reading for. I did 2 different tutorials on Shakespeare and then one on Shakespeare's contemporaries. So for each of those tutorials, I would have to read one play like Titus Andronicus or Othello or Macbeth a week, and my tutor would encourage me to go see performances because there are lots of theater performances in Oxford, and London is a 1-hour train right away. So twice I went to go to the Globe to see a performance there, and then I got to write about that, which was super cool. And in one of the performances, there was Mark Rylance, who's an actor that you probably know from Dunkirk, and he does a lot of Shakespeare. And I was sitting right up on the stage, and he came down and kissed me on the cheek in the middle of the performance during one of the party scenes. So that was my favorite, I think, part of ever seeing a Shakespeare play. I don't think it could get any better than that.
Moving a little bit outside of it, what did you do kind of, outside the classroom, extracurricularly? What was kind of life like at Oxford? How was it different from W&M Mary for the W&M Mary students, or maybe people who are thinking about going there?
It's a city. So, and when I say city, I use the term loosely because it's not like New York or Chicago or anything. A lot of the buildings are small and it's very old, and it definitely has the busy atmosphere of a city, but it's not nearly as huge as any of the cities here in America, which I found to be kind of funny. I lived about 10 minutes away from where the main college campus was, so it's kind of like the equivalent of Ludwell for W&M Mary. And it was nice to be able to live kind of in a quieter area that was close to the river, and there were still tourists that would go by, but not nearly as many as the ones that were in the city center. And there are lots and lots of little cafes and, of course, pubs and bars, but it was so nice to be able to walk around and find a new cafe to study in, or be able to go to any of the libraries in Oxford, because I think there are 20 that are either faculty libraries or just general use libraries that we're allowed to study in addition to the one that's in our individual college area. It's a lot bigger than W&M Mary, and there are a lot more people and far, far more tourists than you will ever imagine ever coming to Colonial Williamsburg.
So did you take the opportunity to travel, a lot around the UK, and kind of, what did you do?
Yeah, I took a weekend trip. It actually wasn't a weekend. It was 24 hours. And we went to Bath, which is about an hour and a half train ride, to see the Roman baths and to explore. And that was with 3 of my friends and I. And that was a lot of fun because we ended up literally backpacking through the city after sleeping in our Airbnb. And then I went into London, as I had mentioned previously, and I took a trip for about 5 days by myself out to go see Cambridge. university and see how like the other half of all the prestigious university students live. I liked the atmosphere there a lot better because it's a lot more rural, and it reminded me a lot more of William and Mary instead of having like a bustling city. I went up to St. Andrews to visit my friends and other tons of William and Mary people who were up there. So it was nice to be back in a kind of like quasi-familiar environment while I was up in St. Andrews, because I was walking down the street and about half of the people were William and Mary people that either my friends or I knew. So it was nice. And I also went and traveled a little bit around Europe, and I visited a friend who was studying in Vienna and then a friend who was studying in Geneva. And then I went to Brussels for a little bit on my own. And then my friends and I, who love literature, went to Dublin and did all the Dublin literary tour things there for a long weekend. And yeah, it was great traveling because everything is so close. And generally speaking, travel is a lot cheaper there than it is here.
Well, got to take advantage of those public transit systems when you can. Yeah. So what was an experience that you didn't expect? Something that kind of caught you off guard, or is just a fun story?
When I was coming back from Dublin, we were there over Easter weekend, and I was with my one friend, and we had the same flight. And we realized that by the time our flight got us back into the Birmingham airport, which is about an hour and a half to 2 hours north of Oxford, that all of the trains probably would have been down for the night, and they would have only had one line running every hour or so. So the second we got off our plane, we sprinted to the train station, and my one friend actually didn't even have a ticket, so we kind of snuck him onto the train. But we had to ride the trains literally in a zigzag pattern all the way to get back to Oxford. And at one point at midnight, we got off in this one small town. We got off on one end of it, and the other train station was a mile away, and we had 9 minutes to get there. And we literally ran a 9-minute mile with our suitcases to get to the other train. So that was poor planning on my part, but definitely a story that we told to our friends after we had recovered after a couple days, and we were all laughing about our travel experience. Stressful when it was actually happening, but we laugh about it now.
Well, all humor is, pain just plus time.
Yeah, exactly. That one especially.
So would you say that overall you would recommend it, going over specifically to Oxford in general, but then maybe the more concept of study abroad itself?
Yeah, I definitely would. I was originally just supposed to be there for the fall, and then I extended to be there for the full year because I loved it so much. And I think that if people are hesitant about whether or not they want to go abroad, just do it, because I know so many of my friends right now who are seniors and who didn't go abroad and are regretting it to the end of the earth, because we have all these wonderful stories and wonderful experiences, and they are really wishing that they had been able to make their classes work or make it work in their schedule and when they were juniors and everything. So no, definitely do it. Especially do Oxford, especially if you like any kind of humanities related fields.
Yeah, that sounds like a ringing endorsement to me. So I'm gonna roll with that. All right. Well, thank you for recording with us and sharing a bit of your experience here. Once again, I'm William. I'm from SASAB, who are hosting this, and it's going to be a podcast through the Reeve Center because they are paying for it. And that's ultimately how that works out. Listen up for more of these because we're going to have more stories coming in from William & Mary students who went abroad. And thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.